Hi everybody, my name is Fraser Kane and I am the publisher of Universe Today, and this is your weekly space hangout for June 7th, 2012. We've got a ton of interesting things to talk about, including the Venus transit, of course, the next stages of commercial space exploration, and Enterprise's last mission. And we might have an interesting review of Prometheus from Alan. No spoilers. So joining me this week, we've got my good friend from MSNBC, Alan Boyle, Cosmic Log, and Amy Shira Teitel from Vintage Space, Discovery, National Geographic, everywhere. So it's great to have you guys here. Everyone else, I think, is completely destroyed from our wall-to-wall coverage of the Venus transit. So we'll give them a break. All right, cool. Well, why don't we get started then, Alan? So you so we all were covered. We'll start with the Venus transit because that's sort of freshest in my mind. And if anyone didn't know, we did a live Google Plus Hangout, and we had 5 telescopes streaming in from different places around the world, all focused in on the transit. And then we had PhD astronomers, historians joining us and talking about the transit, and it was great. It worked out really, really well. I think at the height of it, we had about 6,000 people watching, and I guess people were coming and going. We had special guests, and it was really an amazing experience, I've got to say. I mean, when you really boil it down, it was just a circle with a smaller black circle slowly moving across it. But I think the significance, the history of the event, I think people really appreciated that. So how did your coverage go, Alan?
I was just standing back and watching in awe at what you were doing. Actually, I was in the newsroom hunkered down. Every once in a while, I'd go out in the rain and try to see if I could spot anything.
Northwest coast weather,
right.
Yeah.
So we were totally clouded out. One of my one Twitter follower said, this is like the Seattle of the AMC series The Killing, just totally wiped out. And I told somebody I was bringing my binoculars with solar filters attached to work, and he said, gee, I love you, Alan, but you ought to be bringing a canoe instead. So that gives you an idea what the day was like. So I was just kind of watching the webcasts, having some fun, keeping the story updated, and there was so much to choose from. Your webcast was great. NASA Edge, the Keck Observatory webcast was pretty funny too. So it was just fun. Even if you couldn't see it, just watching the show unfold on the internet was a fantastic way to do it, especially if you're into this. If you're not into this, 6 hours plus can be a long time. Some of the people in the newsroom were telling me, hey, can't you hurry this thing up a little bit? But I'm not quite that influential.
And then, Amy, have you been looking at some of the pictures and video that have been showing up around the internet?
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed with a lot of the proper astronomers' images. The one that you posted on Universe Today, with Hubble crossing in front of the sun, was astounding. I'm amazed that people can get these, and it's so great because you were clouded in. I had a little bit of visibility before trees and clouds covered it up, so it's great to see so many people getting involved in.
Yeah, if anyone doesn't know, that we just posted that picture today. It's from an astronomer named Thierry Legault. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah. And he is known for capturing images of spacecraft. So he gets pictures of the Hubble Space Telescope or the International Space Station, and he will also show off and go to various places around the world and try and capture these spacecraft moving in front of the sun or moving in front of other planets. It's crazy what he can do, and his setup is quite amazing. And so he went to northern Australia so that he could get transits of Hubble moving in front of the sun at the same time that Venus was passing in front of the sun. Yeah, he's a monster. So yeah, that was good. And also, I mean, the images coming from SDO were just NASA's Solar Dynamic Observatory were just phenomenal.
What else was fun to see coming in was all the people posting pictures of the events, their local events of people watching the transit. It was really great to see these events everywhere across the country of hundreds or thousands of people turning out to watch this. I was sort of pleased to see that people were that interested.
And then the joke that we've been making nonstop is that, you know, we've learned all our lessons, and then we'll be ready for the next one at 2117. But there's going to be some other really interesting stuff coming up in the next couple of years, right?
Oh yeah, there's going to be a total solar eclipse in November that will be visible from Australia and the Pacific, and so I'm actually going to go down there with my family and see that. So I'm really looking forward to that, and you know, there are all sorts of sky events. Every year brings cool eclipses, and it's interesting to see how the sophistication and the savvy increases with each event. So by 2117, you know, we're going to have people taking transit vacations probably in low Earth orbit and watching it from space.
Well, people have been saying there's going to be a transit visible from Mars in, what, 2030?
Right.
So, right. So that's part of the reason to head to Mars, to be able to see the Venus transit from there.
Yeah, we better hurry up on that.
Have you ever seen a total solar eclipse?
Yeah, I have. Let's see, when was it? 1979, there was a total solar eclipse that went through Goldendale, Washington, and I was working at the Spokane Spokesman Review at that time. So I went down to cover that one, and they have a replica, a full-size replica of Stonehenge at Goldendale, and so of course the Druids had to turn out for you know, the eclipse rites at the Goldendale mock Stonehenge. So that was quite a trip.
Amy, have you seen one? I've never seen one.
I haven't.
No.
No, the most recent one was the best eclipse I've seen.
Yeah, and I think it's 2017
yeah.
is going to be the one that's going to go from Portland to Nashville. So it's going to go right through the United States. It's going to be a total solar eclipse. That's going to be the one that I throw the kids in the car.
You bet.
We drive, and we're going to see it for sure, no matter what.
Where do you think you're going to go? Because it's always going to be a question mark with the weather. A lot of people kind of tend to go somewhere around Nevada or something like that where the seeing is good.
Yeah, I mean, although, you know, it would be easy enough to get down to Portland, I don't think I would want to brave the weather, our West Coast weather.
That's taking a risk.
Yeah, exactly. So hit the path and then just keep heading east until, you know. But you'll be able to see the weather. I'll bet, you know, I'd be willing to drive 1,000 kilometers either way at night to get it. So, yeah. So that's good. So and there's going to be that, and there's going to be a transit of Mercury coming up, I think, in 2017. So there's going to be a bunch more events like this, and of course there's going to be lunar eclipses, which are always phenomenal. So we'll keep you posted. Now, did any of the science get done? Have we heard about the results of any of the science?
I haven't heard the results other than that the observations were made. So I wouldn't expect, one of the big things that they were trying to do is kind of look at this arc of Venus where the sunlight is refracted through Venus's atmosphere, and you can tell a lot about temperature or the dynamics of the atmosphere from that. So I'm sure that we're going to see some papers out of that one. Some of the images that you see, including the image from the Hinode sun-watching satellite, really clearly shows that arc. And so I'm sure that we're going to get some results from that, but I just haven't heard how successful all these various teams were. Jay Pasikoff from Williams College is the big eclipse guy, and so I probably should check with him and see how his trip went.
Yeah. Well, and that wasn't the only thing. And that's it. Goodbye, Venus transit. Thanks. It's funny.
Thanks for the memories.
Thanks for the memories, yeah. It's funny to kind of go through all of this work and preparation, and then it's gone. And now, you know, we'll be on to something else. So while the transit was happening, the spaceship Enterprise was being moved around, right?
Yeah, so Enterprise was mated to the dock of the USS Intrepid yesterday, which is now the Intrepid Air, Sea, and Space Museum in New York. And I think most of us saw over the weekend it had a bit of a rough ride in that one of its wings smashed into the wooden brace against the side of a bridge that's supposed to allow ships to bump off it without getting hurt, while its shuttle wing just kind of sawed off. There are some pictures. It really looks like it's been sawed off. The official statements from the museum say it's a cosmetic problem. I don't. It looks worse to me, but I don't know my shuttle wingtips that well. But I also, in sort of all this, I've seen some New Yorkers express discontent that they're getting a fake shuttle, and it's gotten me really frustrated. I'm not a shuttle hugger, but the Enterprise is not. The Enterprise is not a fake shuttle, and I think its history, from my perspective at least, I think it's the most interesting shuttle, even though it never had engines and never had a heat shield and can't go into space, although they briefly considered retrofitting it for flight after Columbia, I think. Might have been Challenger, I'm not sure, but anyways, Endeavour was built instead. So I thought, for all the people who think Enterprise is a fake shuttle, I thought I'd give a little bit of a history of its really interesting role in sort of shaping spaceflight. So it was built to teach astronauts how to land on a runway from space, which hadn't been done because in 1958, NASA chose splashdowns because capsules are cheaper, faster, and easier to build and easier to land. The X-15 program, which is one of my favorites, and I will always be ranting about this, the rocket-powered airplane that went about 100 miles up, and Neil Armstrong was one of the more famous pilots of that program, it had done the same thing. It had done these powered flights to upper atmosphere, arc over the top, and then come into a gliding landing. And minus the powered flight part, this is exactly what Endeavour did. Also at Edwards Air Force Base, almost 20 years to the day of the X-15 flights. They kind of act as nice bookends to the splashdown era. So just like the X-15, Enterprise started with taxi tests. They couldn't really do ground tow tests to test the aerodynamics, but 3 captive taxi tests. It was mated on top of the 747 and just it drove 89 miles an hour, 140, and 157 miles per hour just to see how the aerodynamics of the vehicle would work in flight. And next they went to unmanned captive tests. There were 5 of them done, and this was just to see, again, how at flight speeds it would actually react. And this was all data that engineers needed to know of how this giant vehicle, I mean, this thing is huge, was going to come down from from space and land controlled. So the next phase was they got some astronauts in the captive space shuttle and did the same thing. They didn't release it, just to give them a way to sort of test and see how it felt to control it a little bit in space so they could feel how much the wind resistance was going to work. And then there were only 5 free flights done. So this was when it was mated on top of the airplane, the 747, it released, and then it just, no power, just glided to a nice soft landing, something like 230 miles an hour. And there were only 5, and 2 teams of astronauts, including Apollo 13 lunar module pilot Fred Hayes, was the first one to land it. And that's it. After that, it was enough data that they launched Columbia, was the first shuttle, launched it in 1981, and they haven't had any problems in the actual landing phase. So it gathered tons of data. Really interesting, sort of bringing it back around to airplane-inspired flight.
That sounds pretty real. I mean, it sure served a real role in the development of the space shuttle program. But then I guess the shuttles have been flown around on the back of their carrier aircraft, and then they've been handed out to the various museums. And so, who got the Enterprise?
It's the Intrepid Air, Sea, and Space Museum, Sea, Air, and Space Museum in New York.
And this is like a big aircraft carrier, and they just
it
bolted the space shuttle on top of it.
Yeah, actually, Intrepid is the aircraft carrier that plucked Scott Carpenter out of the ocean after his Aurora 7 flight in 1962. He was there for the 50th anniversary, so they're turning the outside of it, the flight deck, into a space shuttle museum and creating a whole exhibit around it, which is opening, I think the website said, I don't know if this is the crash has delayed their curating it and getting it all ready, but it should be July 19th. It's going to be a good exhibit. You can actually it looks like you can maybe get pretty close to it and really get a good look at how big that shuttle is. Yeah, there you go.
Now, I'd heard that it was, now I'm a space shuttle talking.
It is.
I had heard that the damage was mostly cosmetic, that it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can dig up a picture of it while we're talking.
That's I'm going by the official statements. I don't know what the museum would say. If it were worse, would they say anything? I don't know. It's not. It doesn't look like it's a huge piece. It's sort of. I don't have a sense of how big the shuttle is really, but it doesn't look like it's a giant chunk. It's not sort of the front half is missing, but if it doesn't need to fly, I mean, it's not a huge reconstruction, but cosmetically, it might be difficult to sort of get it right back to where it needs to be to look perfect. So.
Now, did you work on this story at all, Alan?
I didn't know. I was just going to say that Rob Perlman was there on the scene, and for Collect Space and Space.com, and mentioned that there was a black covering over the site of the damage, but he didn't make a big deal out of it, and he would probably be one of the folks on the scene who would know most about how things should look. So I think from what I've heard, as Amy said, it's described as cosmetic, and so I think that it's going to be maybe a little badge of honor. There it is.
Yeah,
yep.
That's it.
Yep. Yep.
It looks like a pretty clean cut, but
it really does look like a saw, doesn't it? Yeah. I've got a sailboat, and I live in mortal terror of every sort of solid object. I'm always like terrified to move past bridges and docks and all that kind of stuff. And I've actually got a few dents on my boat, so yeah. I can't imagine. Now, and from what I heard, it was all about the way they were towing it. That they were towing it instead of like having the barges connected directly to the barge that was holding it, they had the tugs were pulling it with a big long
there was
cable.
A tow line.
Yeah, and the problem with that is then you don't have a lot of control over what happens, and it was pretty windy, pretty bad weather, and it's a really tight fit.
The official report said that it was a 35-mile gust of wind that just kind of came out of nowhere and just knocked it just at the right time as it was going under a bridge that only had a couple feet of clearance on either side, and just sort of popped it right into the bridge.
It does raise a question, though. Who's going to be the official shuttle exhibit repair person for all this? I imagine that would be kind of a specialized trade. I wonder if you have to bring somebody in from United Space Alliance to get this fixed up.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of people with the ability to do this that are looking for work, unfortunately, when they let all those people go. So
I'll bring over some carpenter's putty and do it for cheap.
Up. All right, cool. So now, Alan, you had another story that you're working on, which was you're making a joke about 2.5 men.
Oh, 2.5 spacemen?
Yeah, what's this about?
Actually, it's interesting that we've had the successful flight of SpaceX, but the next stage of commercial spaceship development is coming up, that NASA is going to have a new round of grants going out to spaceship builders to create these space taxis for NASA astronauts to use sometime around the 2015, 2016, 2017 period. And so there's been a big flap with Congress over how this program is going to be structured going forward. And Congress wants to have the field reduced. At one time they were talking about having one major grant and then maybe a smaller backup grant for spaceship companies. Right now there are 4 companies, Boeing, Blue Origin, SpaceX, and Sierra Nevada, that are developing spaceships for NASA's use with the benefit of millions of dollars of assistance from NASA to do this. And so the issue is, okay, with the next step, how much is going to be appropriate to give, and how much money, and how many companies are going to be supported. Congress wants fewer, and they want more oversight from NASA. And the original idea was that NASA might give a good number of grants just to kind of cover their bets. And also, so far, this effort has been managed under a Space Act agreement arrangement, which basically means that the companies have more leeway to do what they feel is the best way to handle a challenge, and then NASA just kind of checks off the accomplishments as they go. That's what happened with the SpaceX flight, is that SpaceX and NASA got together, and folks from NASA have said that that SpaceX had different ways of doing things that maybe NASA would not have done, but they worked, and they worked really well. They worked less expensively, and so the spaceship companies want to continue to do things that way. But Congress wants NASA to have a more traditional oversight role. And so recently, some of the top folks in the House on the Republican side, one of the subcommittee chairman, Frank Wolf, had to kind of have a mano thing with the NASA administrator to work out, well, what's this going to be like going forward? And basically what they came up with was this 2.5 concept, where they will support 2 companies with significant amounts of money, and then another company with a little bit of backup money. And so there will be a down select. It's not going to be to 1.5 as Congress wanted, but it'll be 2.5 spacemen to riff off the comedy series on CBS. And they're also going to have a more traditional way, the FAR method of kind of accounting and overseeing this project. And so Congress sort of got its way on that. I haven't heard what the response from the companies has been to this arrangement that was worked out. And it's kind of an informal arrangement, but it does set the parameters for the next phase. And so the question is that one of these companies that is currently getting lots of money from NASA to build a spaceship is under this plan going to be out of the running. And then there are other companies that want to get into the running, such as ATK and Astrium and Lockheed Martin, which are very traditional players in aerospace. And so I think there's going to be a little more competition, a little more give and take on who's going to be getting the money and who's going to actually be building these spaceships for NASA's use. It's still not set exactly what the schedule is going to be for companies to get these funds, but the clock is running out on this current phase of development, and so they got to figure out pretty quickly what the arrangement is going to be, who's going to be selected, and how people are going to go forward. But, you know, based on what SpaceX has done, I can't imagine that SpaceX would not be one of those companies in the running. After that, it's kind of a horse race.
What impact do you think that, I mean, do you think a lot of this is starting to happen because of SpaceX's success, that they have been able to deliver a human-capable capsule to the space station at a fraction of the cost that it's happened in any other way? I mean, that's got to cause a pretty chilling effect for, I guess, for a lot of the other companies that have been supplying NASA in the past, that have been spending billions of dollars in development costs and launch costs, and now for SpaceX to provide it at such a reasonable price. I mean, I don't know. It seems like a really weird response from Congress to be clamping down when what they're trying to do is save money.
Well, this has been a long simmering thing, and I think that it could be that SpaceX's success has kind of accelerated the search for some sort of compromise that would allow NASA to move forward and for everyone to kind of declare victory and move on. As I say, the clock has been ticking, and so until these sorts of issues were resolved, and really until the money and the bottom line becomes evident, you can't really kind of move forward to the next step. And so the fact that SpaceX was so successful with this recent flight kind of points up the fact that, okay, it's time to get going, and that may be why people were trying to kind of get this compromise worked out so that they can really move forward. So it's not as if this suddenly came up because of the SpaceX mission to the space station, but I think that mission and its success kind of added to the pressure to come to some sort of agreement that would allow things to move forward as quickly as they could.
Yeah, I think that SpaceX's success and what's going to play over the next, you know, with the Falcon Heavy, I think they're kind of set to dominate space launches. I mean, their pricing is going to be, I mean, they've landed contracts with Intelsat. They've demonstrated that they can send essentially humans to the International Space Station. They haven't put people in them, but the Dragon is capable of doing that, and all at a fraction of the price.
Yep.
And plus they've got other spacecraft in development. They've got the what was it, the Grasshopper?
Yeah.
The Grasshopper, which is another design, and Elon Musk is again, he's an absolute entrepreneurial juggernaut.
Yeah.
And can just imagine with this kind of success now, with money filling the coffers, we're going to see all kinds of innovations coming out of them. I think that we're just getting started.
Right. SpaceX is definitely the driving force for competition in the spaceflight industry, which is what it's all about really right now. And so I think it's going to get people's competitive juices flowing. And you're right that SpaceX has been looking, they're kind of like the Teflon aerospace company right now, but there's a lot of work that's gone behind that. And
1,800 people there. It's a huge facility. They've been grinding away at this and almost went out of business multiple times.
Right.
I mean, the lead time on this is so long, and that people have been laughing at them for such a long time, and now suddenly the successes are starting to mount up. I think it's going to be really hard for anybody else to catch their rocket trail at this point.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a SpaceX future for a while now until somebody comes up with something disruptive.
It'll be an interesting 2 or 3 years, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just pop in and ask Alan a question?
Yeah.
I'm just sort of curious of your opinion of whether SpaceX were to get more funding from NASA, what are the odds you think that it would fall into sort of that cushy position of, we've got the government and government money behind us and stall innovation? I mean, I'm wondering how much all of these sort of new ideas are sort of coming because it's this commercial competition, and how, if getting all government funding would stall that.
I think if it were, the year 2022 or 2032, I think I might consider that as a possibility. But I think that things are so fresh. You've got such a, energetic young workforce. They mentioned that the average age was around 30 for the SpaceX workforce. That I don't think that that's going to be so much of a concern. For me, the concern is that SpaceX has been so successful over the past 3 flights. What happens when something goes wrong? What happens when rocket science catches up with you? I think that's more of a concern than the fear that SpaceX will get fat and happy because of a government handout. I think that the company has invested, Musk has invested $100 million of his own money, and other private backers have invested probably about a similar amount, if not more. And so it's not as if they're on a government handout right now. I think it's more a hand-up situation, and I think it's a pretty lean Silicon Valley type organization. I think those sorts of concerns arise after you've been settled for maybe 10 or 20 years.
And what do you think about Elon Musk's sort of larger philosophical goals? I mean, he really sounds like he's been drinking the Kool-Aid. He really feels like, you hear his interviews, and beneath the business model from what he's looking at, he really wants to send humans out into space to explore and colonize Mars and places like that. Do you think he's saying that for goodwill, or do you think that he really is a believer on that front?
I think he really is, and I've kind of drunk the Kool-Aid too. If you're going to do this, you can talk all you want about spin-offs of technology, or how many jobs this creates, or national prestige. But when you get right down to it, the reason for doing this is the same reason that the Polynesians maybe took off a few thousand years ago, or the Europeans set out a few hundred years ago, is that you have to go and get to that next frontier, and we're just one huge space rock away from extinction. And so for me, that really is the bottom line of space exploration. And that's a little tricky because it sounds a little woo-woo, and it also sounds like something you can put off. You can say, well, the economy is so bad, and that is such a long-range goal. Let's put that off for a while. But I don't think that's the way you should do it. I think you should keep plugging away. The space effort takes 0.5% of the federal budget, and it's not all that much for something that could end up saving the species.
Well, I think that you see a lot of people who have this real cynical view about what he's doing, that he's just in it to make money. But the reality is that he comes from PayPal, he comes from Silicon Valley, where Instagram just got bought for $1 billion by Facebook. Like, if he wanted to just make money, he could have picked a much easier thing to do. Like, to build rockets and electric cars, that's the really hard road to go. I mean, it really feels like he's both trying to marry his desire to be a business entrepreneur with his interest in the actual outcome, that this is the way that it's going to be made possible.
Yeah.
And so he's saying, like, the only way that we're going to be able to get humans to Mars is if we build a profitable rocket company. And so the only way to build a profitable rocket company is to lower the costs, and so on and so forth. I mean, he's clearly, I think, thought through all the steps, and this is the only path that he has been able to work out that will. The final result is to be, putting humans on the surface of Mars. I really believe it. I mean,
Fraser, you know that Elon has been asked that question many times. Is are you just in this for the money? And he's always said this. He's told me this maybe more than once, that if I just wanted to make money, I would just made a frickin' Facebook game.
Yeah, yeah, that would have been the way to go. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, so one last thing, Alan, before we let you go, was you saw Prometheus.
Oh yeah, that's the semi-prequel to the Alien series, directed by Ridley Scott. It's premiering actually tonight after midnight, that there are going to be showings of this film, and science fiction fans have been kind of salivating over all this, and it's a different film. I'm going to say that it's different tone from Alien. Sure, of course there's going to be gore and things popping out, and the sorts of things you expect from a movie in the Alien universe. But I think that the aim of this film is to kind of address those big topics, have a big spectacle, and kind of explain the larger philosophical underpinnings of this alien universe, answer some of the questions about why the events played out the way they did in the alien movies that follow chronologically. And so I think if people are expecting Alien 5 or 6, it could be even a disappointment, because it's not that kind of movie. But if you're looking for something that's really thoughtful and a big screen event, this is going to be a good movie for you. And I'm not sure how it's going to do at the box office, frankly.
It's going to kill. It's going to destroy. It's going to be just fine.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no problem.
Is that what they said about John Carter of Mars, too?
No. No, they did not say that. They said that about Avatar.
Yeah.
And they were right.
So, yeah, but it raises a lot of big questions about where we came from. You'll see references to panspermia, the whole idea of, one of the greatest characters in the movie is the AI android, David. And so he's really you can talk all you want about the woman from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, but Michael Fassbinder, the android David, is really the star of the show here.
That sounds great. And thank you for not spoiling it. I hope that wasn't a spoiler.
Speaking of androids, I did ask Seth Shostak from the SETI Institute just generally about this movie and the idea of what you do if you do make an alien detection. And he said, well, why would you want to send a spaceship full of human meat out for the first encounter with the aliens? You should just send the androids in there first. I don't know why the people who are portrayed in these movies don't figure that out, that you just should send an army of Davids to to make that first contact with the aliens.
Yeah,
it'd be a much less interesting movie.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, well, this is this whole concept of the fact that any exploration of space leaving the solar system, there's almost no way that humans in our current form would be able to make that kind of a trip.
Right.
I mean, even if you could get moving at high velocities, significant fractions of the speed of light, it would still take hundreds of years to get to another star. You wouldn't know what you'd be arriving with the fuel involved. I mean, no, you send little robots a fraction of a gram that have the ability to get there and fly quickly past and take pictures. That's really all we'll be able to do, I think, for a long time.
There you go. There's the Fraser Cain space program.
Exactly. Yeah, it would make for really compelling movies.
Oh yeah, that would be a thriller.
Little spacecraft. Beep. Beep. Yeah. Cool. Well, let me see if I got any questions on the. Now, if anyone has any questions about about what we're talking about today, no spoilers. Then go ahead and post them in the chat comments. That would be great. Okay, so Thad Sabo makes a really good point, which is, but don't AI have the same rights as human? And I think in the case of the AIs in the Aliens franchise, they're essentially the same as humans. So wouldn't that just be murder to send them to meet the aliens?
Yeah, wow, think about that. There we're getting into a great philosophical question as well. What rights do increasingly intelligent machines have, especially if they become more intelligent than some humans? So that's a good point. Sounds like a good movie.
Russell Bateman comments that the Grasshopper is going to have a reusable first stage rocket. And so this is I guess one of the big complaints about SpaceX is, you know, they've lowered their costs. They've built a really a well-integrated technology environment for building all of the components. But at the end of the day, they are exploding fuel on the rocket, and away it goes. Nothing's getting reused. It's just a waste of resources. So, you know, what do you know about the Grasshopper?
Well, the Grasshopper, that is a first stage that's equipped with thrusters that would be able to fly itself back to the launch pad after it's used. Now, SpaceX has always been aiming for total reusability of the stages and the spacecraft itself. Theoretically, the Dragon that just came back can be refurbished and used again. Under the terms of the contract, with NASA for these supply flights that are coming up, NASA gets a fresh Dragon every time. But it could be that these Dragons could be gotten ready for another flight. So if you're willing to buy a slightly used Dragon, SpaceX might have one for you. So that's very true. And SpaceX is aiming for that. In fact, folks had thought that SpaceX would go for that reusability even in the early flights, but it looks as if they're not quite there yet. So you know, as Elon Musk says, rocket science is super frickin' hard. So that's one of the hard things, I think, probably harder than maybe Elon Musk thought it was going to be.
Well, when you see the launch of like the space shuttle and the rocket boosters would peel off, and those were reused.
Yeah.
But the actual main fuel tank, that kept going on the space shuttle far too high to orbit, so it would burn up upon re-entry, and then the orbiter itself was able to be reused. So that's actually quite a lot of reusability when you think about which part was disposed, which is a big fuel tank, although a very complicated, very expensive fuel tank.
Right. And then when you mentioned the shuttle, the issue is reusability, but at what cost? The shuttle orbiters are reusable, were reusable, but it took so much to refurbish them after each launch that it's not really a sustainable model for affordable spaceflight.
And I guess this is the big challenge, right, is that you've got to have some way that you can have the spacecraft protect itself from the re-entry into the atmosphere, and that's going to be having to use extra fuel. It's essentially going to have to slow its descent. It's going to have to not burn up as much of itself in heat tiles and take as much of a pounding once it's finished that mission. And so any fuel spent attempting to protect the spacecraft from its launch is a loss of the weight that you can actually launch into orbit.
Right.
You know?
Ironically, Amy, you were talking about the splashdown era and how the shuttle kind of marked the end of the splashdown era. We're getting back into
right
the
back.
Right, that's right.
I love that. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think the figure on the shuttle was it only saved about 20% of the cost to refurbish it, and I think that's holding true to the Orion and SLS configuration once it's finally flying. That the reusable pieces in the first iteration are only going to save about 10 or 20% the cost. It's true. It's reusable, but not that much better.
And ironically, not ironically, but the aim for SpaceX is to get back to landings on land using a thruster system that they feel that this is really the next step. They call it Dragon 2.0, and they're going to start testing that system later this year. So the splashdown era is beginning, but who knows how long it's going to last before we get to the real cool rocket ship era.
Yeah. So Dave Finton asks, will there be the possibility that SpaceX or some other private company will do things like interplanetary exploration, manned or otherwise? So what do you think about the chances now, especially with companies like Planetary Ventures, Resources?
Planetary Resources.
Planetary Resources, yeah, starting to do taking over some private exploration of space.
Planetary Resources, the first step, that's the company that eventually plans to do asteroid mining, and their first step is going to be low Earth orbit telescopes. But SpaceX, again, Elon has this all figured out for humans to go settle on Mars, and so, of course, interplanetary exploration is part of the picture. And SpaceX has been working with Ames Research Center on this mission, you've probably heard about it, called the Red Dragon, which would send an unmanned Dragon to the surface of Mars and do some drilling and some exploration there. So yes, that's definitely part of the picture, and we may see that area of the picture take shape sometime in the next 10 years for sure.
We actually posted a story on Universe Today about and Amy, I know you were sort of all over this. There was the idea to do a reality show where people from now till 2030 will prepare for human exploration of Mars, and it will culminate in a series of one-way trips to Mars, where people will we're laughing, but we can't. This is serious. These people are serious. Where culminating in a series of one-way missions to Mars, where people will land on Mars, and then over the years, additional modules will arrive, and the colony on Mars will appear. Now, and the thing is like when people laugh about the thought of a one-way trip to Mars, but in fact, that is the assuming that like you're not sending them to their death. A one-way trip to Mars makes all of your launch costs, your life support costs so much cheaper, because you really only have to get them there, get them to the surface, and then theoretically they can start building their own resources from the surface of Mars. They can harvest oxygen and out of the ground, out of the atmosphere. Build their own rocket fuel. If they can find water there, then they can build rocket fuel with the hydrogen. So there's a lot of resources on the surface of Mars, and so if you send people on a one-way trip, in fact, if you send one person on a one-way trip, that's doable. They just would die. But I think the idea is that you would just keep sending people, and eventually the return trip would be figured.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But a lot of people, and you would have a lineup of people around the block that would love to go on that one-way trip.
I don't think there aren't as many people laughing at that idea today as there might have been even 3 or 4 years ago. This is getting a lot of traction among people who are really thinking seriously about how you begin Mars settlement. I think the problem is that a lot of the people who would volunteer to take that kind of mission would be the wrong people to send. They might be people who are older, who feel like they have had their a full life on Earth, and they wouldn't mind taking a chance on Mars, taking a chance on being part of history, even if you don't come back, and even if your life expectancy is dramatically reduced, maybe to 0 once you get there. But the people that you want are people like the folks who settled the frontier in the American West, or people who are healthy, who can tinker and can fix things, and who have families, and so that's more of a challenge to find those people who are right for doing the settlement of another planet.
Was it Robin Clark mentioned in the comments, I'm worried that SpaceX being so far ahead of the game that they discourage other companies and they're becoming a monopoly and therefore stifling the very competition they started. Wouldn't that be ironic? Do you think there's a chance of that SpaceX is so far out of all of the competition, you know, that the Boeings, the Lockheed Martins aren't going to be able to compete, and all of the launches are going to go to SpaceX? With the Falcon Heavy, they can handle double the launch weight of the Delta Heavy. With the Grasshopper, they're going to be able to do reusable spacecraft. I mean, are they about to completely upend the space launch market?
My view is no. I don't see that in the cards right now. You know, maybe in 3 or 4 years. We'll have a better idea how the rest of the aerospace industry responds to SpaceX. But you know, these other companies, Boeing and Lockheed Martin, have been doing this for decades, and I think that this is just what they need to become more competitive and to think about doing things in different ways. I don't think that they would be rendered extinct as much as some people in the new space movement would like to see that happen.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want that to happen either. I mean, but then, I mean, there's going to be other people who are chasing SpaceX's tail. I mean, you've got what they're doing with Blue Origins, with Jeff Bezos and Amazon. You've got
X-Corp
Aerospace. You've got X-Corp. You've got, so there's a lot of choices as well, and there's even more extreme ideas, which I'm sure Elon Musk wouldn't even be wanting to touch with a 10-foot pole. I mean, you've got you've got the Stratolauncher from Paul Allen, and so I think there's a lot of even more interesting ideas as well that could, you know, and again, I mean, SpaceX has built this huge facility, 1,800 people. They've gone down this path, and so if someone comes along and comes up with an even cooler technology that doesn't use any of that established infrastructure, SpaceX is going to have a really hard time responding quickly to air-based launches or balloon-based launches, or, you know, electromagnetic, who knows what it's going to be. So I think I wouldn't be, that would be the last thing I'd be worried about right now.
Well, I'd love to hear what Amy has to think, you know, based on what space history has been, whether there's been any sort of age like this or any situation like this where you really do have competition in spaceflight.
I mean, from my history perspective, the only real competition we've had has been the space race with the Soviet Union, and that, of course, did spawn a lot of really great innovation. The problems they answered in 9 years were amazing, and I think it's really interesting now that the competition doesn't have an enemy, and I think that's a nice, it's like a kind competition, and I think your point about sort of these younger companies like SpaceX coming in and kind of inspiring the old giants like Lockheed and Boeing, who have been involved with spaceflight since the 60s, it could be a way to kind of bring new ideas into these big companies that have the background and have 50-plus years now of knowledge of how to do this stuff behind them. I think it might actually bring some more innovation into these other companies. I don't really see it kind of knocking out the competition just yet. At least I really hope it doesn't, because I think it's such an interesting environment.
But I think, as you said, there's never been a time that's been like this. There's been, as you said, there's been a state-to-state competition between the United States and the Soviet Union, and I guess theoretically there's going to be a state-to-state competition between the United States and the Chinese now with their launch program. But there's never been the kind of competition that a free market provides, which we see with our iPhones and Samsung Galaxy phones. Like, it's a different kind of competition and yields different benefits, and hopefully it's more sustainable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the issue, is what do you do when you defeat your enemy nation to that goal and they're out of the running, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we got some great questions and we got some great discussion, and I think we will wrap it up here. So as always, how do we find out more about Alan Boyle and his wonderful space writing?
Oh, cosmiclog.com is one way to do it, but there's more to MSNBC's space coverage than Cosmic Log. You can go to space.msnbc.com and get the whole story, including stories from our partners, including Universe Today.
And Amy, where can we find out more of your work?
AmyShiraTeitel.com. Everything's there. My blog, Vintage Space, is hosted there, and links to everything I've done.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, great. And, of course, you can read more of what I'm doing on Universe Today. You can listen to our Astronomy Cast podcast, join our virtual star parties that we do every Sunday night where we hook up a bunch of telescopes live on the Internet here on a Google Hangout and show you the wonders of the universe. So we'll see everybody next week. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later.